Session of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. Very warm welcome to all of you. Let's get started with our session. Today we are going to have a concluding discussion on the Shloka 5.10 that we have been talking about. So let me share my screen and we'll get underway. Okay, so let's get started with our opening prayer. So very warm welcome again to all of you. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurudevo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Radhe Radhe, a very warm welcome to all of you. So let's get started with today's session. So we will get started with our Soul Soup segment, the series of mind management that we are doing. So give me a sec. Yeah, so let's get underway. So as part of the Soul Soup segment, we are doing the science of mind management, where we are discussing that the mind has the potential of becoming our best friend or worst enemy. And in the previous series, we spoke about the power of thoughts, how thoughts by thought we can forge our destiny, and thought is the seed which eventually translates to action, becomes a habit, and pretty much defines our character and personality. It all starts with a thought, and the responsibility of productive thoughts lies solely on us. And there's a direct correlation between the quality of thoughts and the quality of our mind as well, right? So if we improve the quality of our mind, the thoughts would automatically improve. Today we are going to talk about the mind body connection. So mind is an important thing, right? In spirituality, mind is the only thing, but then the mind also affects our body, and that connection is what we are going to explore today. So our thoughts impact. What does it impact? Our thoughts impact our physical appearance. We spoke about this as well. If you have healthy, wholesome, productive thoughts, you are a happy person, you emanate certain radiations. And if you are generally happy and not angry or irritated, then you will radiate positive energy around, and even it chisels the contours of our appearance as well, the face as well. It can happen. Sometimes we come across somebody and for no reason we find that person cranky, or somebody has a positive vibe around it. It all is enabled through the kind of thoughts that we are harboring in our head. So physical appearance is impacted by our thoughts. What else? Our actions. We spoke about that as well. It all starts with thought. Thought translates into actions. What we end up doing and what we repeatedly do becomes a habit, and a repeated habit, we are a sum total of our habits only. That defines our character and personality as well. And our health. Now science is exploring that connection. It has already explored. I would say that there is a lot of books, literature written on this aspect of it, where our health is also influenced by the mind. Now, even in Yoga Vashisht, and which is an ancient scripture, uh, the mind-body connection is being spoken about. So Lord Ram had once asked, while taking a tour of his kingdom, he asked, when he saw so much of misery and people suffering from ailments, he came and asked his Guruji, what is the cause of disease? And he had told that Ram, the Vyadhi or disease, it begins in the mind. This is how it all starts. And you see the people who are, this is how it works. So first, when we harbor stressful thoughts, it impacts our manomay kosh, the mental sheath. Then It agitates the pranamaya kosh, which is the vital energy sheet, and eventually it manifests in forms of a disease in our annamaya kosh, which is our gross body. Okay, this is how it affects it. In fact, there is this, like I said, the science is also looking at the modern medical science is waking up to the fact, and they're acknowledging this mind-body connection. And the powerful example of it is placebo. Have you heard about placebos? Does placebo work? Yeah, the opposite of placebo is nocebo, by the way. Okay, so placebo actually works. So there's a doctor his name is Dr. Stewart Wolf. He conducted an experiment in 50s. What he did was that he was conducted a research on pregnant women who have a natural tendency to vomit. So in the first few months of pregnancy, and when they would complain to Dr. Wolf of the symptoms of vomiting, he would give them Epicac or Epixac. I don't know how do you do that. It is an emetic or a vomit inducing drug. So typically it is used when you have it's a safeguard measure kept when if somebody accidentally swallows poison or intentionally does that, then they give him so that they can throw it out. So when he administered the drug to the pregnant woman as expected, they already had vomitish tendencies, they started vomiting. But then he said, do not worry. Now I'm going to administer a drug to you, which is a wonder drug. And what it is, and which has been administered on thousands of patients. And what it does is it it miraculously suppresses the vomiting tendency. And he gave the same drug to those women. And guess what? It should have ideally aggravated their tendency, but the symptoms they disappeared for the night after that drug was given, and the morning the symptoms came back again. So when you are given that, it is called, another name of placebo is remembered wellness. When you go to your family doctor, the moment the doctor touches you, you feel, now I'm going to get cured. So that is called remembered wellness. And there is something called remembered illness also. If you go to a doctor for a routine checkup, the moment they touch you and you are feeling fine, all of a sudden your BP can get raised as well, just with the prospect of what if he's going to find something in me. So there is a direct correlation of mind with our health as well. And that is why it's very important to tend to our mind, not only from a spiritual perspective, but also from our health perspective as well. And of course, our actions are dictated by the kind of thoughts we harbor in our mind. So we'll continue to explore this connection. But for today, this much only. Let's move on and get to, yes, placebos do work. Okay, it is not considered something good, right? If you tell somebody, you know what, the placebo worked for you, it's like, okay, really? You think it was all mental? But yeah, there is a connection. Let's go to our shloka now. I'm going to recite it and we'll pick up three hands. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyatena sapapena padam pavit patram ivambhasa. Okay, let's take three hands and then get started.
Radhe Radhe Aparna ji.
Radhe
Radhe Radhe. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate na sapapena padma patram evambhasa. Thank you, Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, very nice. Pranaji.
Radhe Radhe Shri Ramya ji.
Radhe Radhe. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate na sapapena padmapatram ivambhasa. Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Yes, Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Shri Ramya. We can take maybe one more hand.
Radhe Radhe Riya ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Riya ji.
Radhe Radhe. ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रम् इवाम्भसा.
Very nice. Thank you. All right. Maybe one more hand we can take, a lottery, and then we get started. We have enough content to cover, and then three is the rule. We'll take one more.
Radhe Radhe Sandhya ji.
Thank you. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha Lipyate na sa papena Padmapatra mivambasa. Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Sandhya ji, and good to see you back. And Abhaji, thank you for sharing example. The book from Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, basically diagnosis for leg problems, the lower cause, the fear of future, not wanting to move, and that kind of a belief system can actually render you incapacitated as well. So let's move on. In this shloka, Lord Krishna is saying, those who dedicate their actions to God, abandoning all attachment, remain untouched by sin, just as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. So the Karma Yoga aspect of it is, we spoke a lot about Nilambo Nucifera, which is lotus. We'll touch a bit about Karma Yoga aspect of it today to conclude our discussion. So instability in the material world. So Shankaracharya ji had stated that, so if you look at the water on a lotus leaf here, this is kind of an instability we experience in this world as well. The world is never going to let you settle down in your comfort zone. The reason for that is that the world is created from the Maya energy of God. And as part of that, it is always going to continue to challenge you or torment you or force you to exert yourself. Basically, it's telling you, don't come to me, go to my master. Okay, as a perfect servant, the servant would not want you to come to the servant. Servant would rather, the proper service a servant can render to its master is by telling people to go to its master. And that's essentially what Mike world is doing as well. So Shankaracharya ji has said that, know this world to be stricken with disease and arrogance and afflicted with sorrow. And that is what our scriptures tell us as well. This world is Shashwatam and Dukhale. At every step of our life, there is a lurking danger, right? It is like walking through a forest. At every step, there is a danger. Somebody can, not that we become paranoid about it, but think of it. We hear news every day. And when we go out on roads, even then we are not sure, right? Some nutcase might come in and hit your car, or any kind of incident can happen. So it's pretty, I hope you're enjoying the water dance on lotus, how beautifully lotus works, right? So anyways, it is an unsteady state to be here in this world. And then, but then there is method to this madness. So let's move on. The question arises, how do we make our work sinless? Now let's understand, the other day you're talking about sin, right? So there is absolutely nothing in this world which is bereft of sin, right? Right from a simple act of talking, walking, cooking, and even, for in your, there could be scenarios in your job. Like, for example, if somebody forces you on gunpoint to take bribe in your job and you don't want to be part of it, it's a practical problem and you do end up taking it. There could be an element of sin in that as well. In fact, somebody asked this question to Maharaj in one of his books, Prashnotri. It's a very practical question. I think somebody who was posted in Bihar, and he was an IFS forest officer. He asked the question, what do I do if in my job somebody comes and put a gun to my head and say, take this money, otherwise your family, and you'll have to say goodbye to your family and your near and dear ones. And those kind of situations can happen actually in practical life. So what do I do? So Maharaji said, see, he's a Jagat Guru. He should have answers to all the questions and situations, right? So he gave a very practical answer. He said, take the money and then put it at God's feet. That's it. What's the big deal? So think about it. I mean, who can tell it with so much of conviction and confidence? Only God can, right? But the point is, if we normally do that and end up consuming it or not knowing the right way of going about it, then we could end up incurring a sin. There could be scenarios in our lives, and then you really don't know how do you get off that sin. And then of course we may have to stomp people along the way to rise up, especially in corporate hierarchies. It can happen, right? And then every bit of money we earn is by hurting people or sidelining competitors. That can happen. Business, it can happen all the time. And then beyond a point, then it becomes a part of your existence itself, and you justify yourself. That means justify an end, and then it's for a bigger cause and stuff like that. But then fact of the matter is that it's a pretty competitive world, and inadvertently we could end up committing a lot of sins at the cost of other people. And then even when we are walking on the ground, how can we not commit a sin? We might be killing a lot of ants and other microorganisms as well, right? These are the ones which are visible, but we cannot take care of them, right, when we are walking. So the fact of the matter is that we end up committing sin, um, so many sins. That's how the world is. Okay, that's how the nature of the world is, and that is why they say one way to absolve yourself, the tax of justifying your existence on this earth, because we draw so much from the ecosystem around, and we do it at the expense of so many organisms and microorganisms, is to part with 10% of your wealth. That is just the rental of justifying your existence, or paying the rent for your existence in this world. That is why the 10% rule is there in our scriptures. So actual charity actually begins even after that 10% happens. 10% is just the cost of living here, because we do so many harm to so many things around, knowingly or unknowingly. Now Lord Krishna is saying, but okay, or not everything is gloom and doom. There is a way you can make your life sinless. Okay. um, I mean, it is not basically, not to commit sin is impossible, but then there is a way around it as well. And in this particular case, Arjun is asking, right? This is going by the same definition. Arjun is not being asked to kill bed bugs, right? He's being asked to kill human beings, and that to his own near and dear ones, that to the ones that had nurtured him in their lap, like Bhishma Pitama and his cousins themselves. And Lord Krishna is, and then he was fearing that he will go to hell for this kind of an act. And Lord Krishna told him that, like fire is covered by smoke, every act you do is covered by sin, because you are in this material realm. That is the reality you'll have to live with. Then what? But there is a way. Like I said, there's no all gloom and doom. There's a way to become sinless. What's the way? Now get into that. World is laws. You kill others, you are going to be hanged. But let's look at one worldly example. So there's a person who's entered army. Nation is at war. He's going to lay down his life for the protection of the nation. So what happens? He goes and guns down a lot of people. He comes back, and then he's not given a life imprisonment. Instead, he is given a medal. He's rewarded for his act of killing people. And in normal course, if he had done that, then he would have been hanged, and he would have stood the trial, and then he would have been hanged in normal course if somebody goes and kills people. But in this particular case, he was doing it as a matter of duty. So his intention was higher. And that is why he ends up getting rewarded as opposed to getting punished for this particular act. What made the difference? The context and the intention behind it. That made the whole difference. Now, this is a higher, basically, it's a duty that you're performing. So you get a higher reward in this case. And there is something higher than that, higher as well, right? Highest also. What is that? If you can go beyond the sense of duty as well, and let's understand that part as well. Now, once we becomes capable of being we become capable of being untouched in this world, what is it that what can make us sinless? Let's try to understand that. So this is us. Now, when we are doing karmas, or when we are taking on any endeavor, work or action, like we call it prayas, cheshta, or an endeavor for our sake, then we are responsible for the good and the bad. When we are doing it for ourselves, we are responsible for good and bad. Okay, and then as a part of that, we have to bear the consequences of our karmic reactions, because we are doing it for ourselves. However, when we do it for the sake of Bhagavan, God, we are not responsible. When we develop this concept, what I'm doing is for the pleasure of God, then Lord Krishna says we are absolved of the sin. Okay, he said, all right, never mind. Zero, multiplication with zero. I don't count it as a karma at all. Yes, Rahul, you had a question?
Radhe Radhe. Aparna ji just wanted to see the previous slide once you are finished with this one. Yeah.
Okay, I can quickly do that, Aparnaji. You have 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, done. Okay, good. All right, so but when we do it for the sake of God, then we are absolved of the sin. Then we are not tainted with the sin. We don't get implicated in that activity. Same thing happened with Hanumanji as well. He did a lot of Brahma Hatyas in Lanka. And was it counted as a murder in God's book? No, because he was doing Ram Kaj. When you're doing Ram Kaj, there's nothing which is a sin. In fact, this is an interesting thing. When you say Ram Kaj, when he goes to Lanka, he met Vibhishan. And Vibhishan had, so when he when he went to Lanka, he saw a tulsi in one of the houses. He said, "Wow!" And then he saw Ram written on the door. Then he was like, full of thrill looking at that in Lanka. So it was like, how can somebody, recite Ram's name? Looks like there's a devotee here, and then Tulsi also he saw in Lanka. So he was very happy to find out who this person is, and then he meets Vibhishan, and Vibhishan tells him that, and then they both meet. It's like they had a common Ishtadev, Ram Bhagwan, and they both meet and hugged each other. And then Vibhishan says, "Why is it that, Lord Ram has bestowed his mercy on you, and you can meet him, you have met him, and I have not so far, although I have been reciting his name for so long?" So Hanumanji said, "That's because you have only been doing saying Ram Naam, and I am doing Ram Kaj. So when you do Ram Kaj, when you do Seva, you get more grace, quicker grace. So that is the importance of Seva as well." And then he said, "All right, let's make a deal. You make me meet my spiritual mother," Hanuman say, "and I'll make you meet spiritual father, Lord Ram." And then that's how they formed a bond there. So when we do work for God, Hanumanji was doing work for God. And then there's no sin for that act. Okay, even if you end up committing. So when you're doing Seva, the bhav has to be had. Don't start justifying all your bad activities under the pretext of doing seva. But the point is, when you're truly doing it for the sake of God, then it does not count as a karma at all. In God's books, it's multiplication with zero. And it is only when you are doing it with a selfish interest that does it count as a karma, not for the selfless actions directed at God. So this analogy of lotus leaf is back here when the water, see, then this lotus floats at the top the surface of the lake, and it's not wetted by water. Karam yogis are also untouched by sin. Like you saw that water going around that lotus leaf, they are not touched by that. They might be performing all kind of works like we do, but then they are not tainted at all with any of the actions, because they are performing their works in divine consciousness at that point. Okay, that is the formula for Karam Yoga. Let's continue to build on that. Now, this can happen, and this can happen as well. Okay, this is Karam Bhog versus Nanik ji, you had a question. I see your hand raised. Maybe you can preserve the question.
I had this question.
Yes.
Can we take it right now, or you want to take it at Nitin ji?
Yeah, we can take it towards the end. Let me finish off, and then we
Okay.
can take Nanik ji. Okay. So this is Karam Bhog versus Karam Yog. You could be doing your stuff. Not that everybody does. I mean, I don't want to stereotype that part, but more important, what is going on in your mind is important, right? You might be thinking about the cooker whistle or the milkman or the maid and stuff like that. That is not going to give us any. That is called Karam Bhog. And on the other side, you might be writing, in a meeting and something, but if your consciousness is thinking about Krishna, or at the back of your mind, thinking about Krishna doesn't mean you are not focused on the task at hand, but it's a kind of a feeling or a consciousness that God is with me. He's both my protector and my witness, and the big picture part of it, that who I'm working for, that becomes part of your synonymous with your identity. That becomes Karam Yoga at that point. Now, there are two aspects of work, right? Let's understand that part as well. Now, the activity could be same. The external activity we do and internal attitude towards it. And this example, I like to drive home this point. Now, there's a temple that is being built, and you've got three people who are, helping build that temple, helping with the construction work, maybe lifting some stones and stuff like that. And one is a volunteer, others two are there as well. They are all engaged in that activity. Now, you ask the first person, what is your motivation to do that? He's saying, I'm concerned with the salary. And if somebody else is going to offer him a better salary, $200 or 200 rupees per hour, he won't mind switching jobs. So his motivation is money. Second person's motivation for that act is that he's contributing towards a bigger cause. It's for him, it's not just an activity. It is like, I'm building a temple, which is going to be a hub for so many things down the line, for spiritual act and religious activities down there. So he's happy about that. And the third person is simply doing it as a kar seva, as a service to God. So activities same, but motivations are different, right? So what is going on in your mind is what you end up getting the credit for. And in this case, only when you are doing it as a service to God, the third one qualifies as a Karam Yoga, the other two not. The first one would be probably Rajasic, the second one is probably Sattvic, but the third one would end up becoming a Karam Yoga activity, because now you're doing solely with the motivation to as a service to God. That becomes Karam Yoga. Rest all both are both pure karma, okay, with different results. Now let's understand this key principle, okay, the divine principles. It's a very important one. That's where we're going to have a bit of a discussion today. So these are very important principles to understand, and it applies to Karma Yoga as well. And a few other things we'll talk about as well. The first principle, thinking or loving the divinity in its divine form gives a divine result. Pretty simple, straightforward. The only challenge here is that you can only have darshan of God and be able to see God or know God. For that, you should have that divine senses, right? To know that if divinity manifests in front of us, we will not be able to recognize it. In fact, we have seen God multiple times. Multiple times we have seen, but we have never been able to identify that it's God. And it's quite possible we have seen Krishna as well. We said, yeah, it looks pretty attractive and certainly a competent boy, but God, no, we have not believed he's God. So this can happen only with people who are already on the cusp of God realization or probably realized God. And when they see God and they are lost in God, they are going to go to get divine results. So that is the first principle. Second principle, if thinking, loving the divine without awareness of its divinity also gives a divine result. It's a very important principle. So you are thinking and loving the divine and you have no awareness of its divinity, then also you'll get a divine result. Okay. One of the classic stories for that is that of Shupnaka. She got enamored by Lord Ram. Okay, and she was not aware who Lord Ram is, but she fell in love with, not fell in love, but got infatuated with him when she saw him, and wanted to marry him. Until Lord Ram directed him to Lakshman, because he was in a Maryada Purushottam avatar and he already had a wife. So he said, I cannot take on Shrupanakha like that. And rest is history. We know what happened. She got her nose and ears chopped off. But then God, going by this principle, she should have gotten a divine result, right? So yes, Lord Ram made amends for it when he came in his full form avatar as Lord Krishna. So in that avatar, Shrupanakha came as Kubja. She was a lady with a hunchback. And Krishna saw and say, "Hey, Sundari, where are you going? A beautiful woman, where are you going?" And she thought he's making fun of me. And he simply held her from the chin, did a tap, made her into a beautiful girl and married her. Okay, so he made amends for the previous thing because he could not do that. So the point here is whether you know it's divinity or not, for some reason, if you have gotten attracted towards it, God will say Tathastu and he will still give you the divine result. That is how it works. Okay. Same thing happened with Ratnamala as well. Ratnamala was the daughter or sister of King Bali. So when the Vaman avatar happened, it was a cute little boy. He came in as a very beautiful, very cute little boy. And he came to Bali's yagya. And then the moment she saw him, she immediately had a Vatsalya bhav. I wish I had a baby like this. So God said Tathastu. And then when Vaman avatar, he covered pretty much everything in his 2 steps. And in the third step, he said, where should I place it? So Bali said, put it on my head. I don't have any other place to offer. And then he said, oh, this kind of a person, if I had a son like this, I would have killed him. That's what Ratnamala thought. So Vaman avatar said Tathastu. Okay, in both cases, he said Tathastu. So she came as Putana. Both the wishes were fulfilled. She got that Vatsalya of feeding Krishna as a mother. And at the same time, she got her other wish fulfilled as well, tried to poison him as well. So God gave Tathastu both. But then the important thing is that Putana went to Golok. Anybody whom God kills has to go to their abode. That's his rule. And that is why he was asked by Naradji, you gave Putana Golok and you gave Yashoda Maiya Golok. What's the difference? He said, of course, I had to. I mean, I had drunk her milk, so technically she became my mother, so I had to. But then the difference is that for Yashoda Maiya, I'll be eternally indebted. Now, if God is indebted, you can only imagine what it means, right? That same thing Lord Ram had said as well, that Hanuman, for one act of your service, I will be eternally indebted to you. So, whether you love divine or whatever feeling you harbor towards divine, even though you are not, might not be aware of it, it will still give you a divine result. That's the second principle. The third principle is love. Thinking, loving material things with a divine sentiment gives a divine result. This is the most applicable and practical one for us. Now, you look at material things with a divine sentiment, it will give you a divine result. Now, how is it practical for us? There are two ways. One is the Karam Yoga part of it. Now, you're building that consciousness, even though you have your material work going, but you are somewhere saying, okay, I'm doing it for God. You have not seen God, but you try to relate your work and your service and your act to God, which is kind of building a divine sentiment there, right? Even though you haven't seen God. So Karam Yoga works like that. And because you're running a simulation in your head. Yes, Sandhya, you got a question?
Radhe, Radhe. So this is regarding this point only.
Mhm.
So when, like a person says that I see God in my child
Mhm.
and that's why I'm loving and, that's
This point has to be understood properly. You see God in your child, then you should see God in your neighbor's child as well, and pretty much see God in all the children as well. It should not be an alibi to build your attachment towards something material and then, putting it as
but does that defy
proxy.
this principle?
Proxy for God, it would, right? Then you would see divinity in everything. So, see, the point here is if you truly do that, it's very subjective, right? Some people can see God in their parents and then can serve them like that. Sure. If you are having building that sentiments, sure, why not? But so that we cannot say no, they are not. It's an individual call somebody has to take. If they truly see divinity, sure. But the manifestation of that would be that, you're typically you would start seeing divinity in all human beings, not just restricted to that. It's not that you are mean with others and only thinking of them as God. That should, but it's an individual call. Very difficult to say, maybe they have a way to perceive God in a certain relationship, sure, but it's very difficult normally with material people. Then their bhav should not get bad about them regardless of what it is. Otherwise, you'll end up doing nama parad, right? It's like you cannot have a negative sentiment towards God. It's like today you are God, tomorrow you are not God. I mean, that cannot be fluctuating in that case. It should be like Nirantar, Ananya, all those principles. So with material things, our material buddhi will also be there. So it's very difficult to practice that. Even with Guru, we start applying buddhi. So now here we are talking about normal human beings. When you see imperfections in them, when you see adverse behavior, and still you can see divinity in them, it's a pretty elevated state if you can do that. So Karam Yoga, and then the more important is the Roop Dhyan, where people say, what is this deity worship you're talking about? You do that, you are building divine sentiments and God will appear. He can manifest. He's basically Prabhu Vyapak Sarvatra Samana, Ramayana says, right? He's present in every atom of this universe. So why not in the deity as well? He could manifest if he wants. There are tons of stories in our scriptures where the deity has actually manifested because somebody had belief in it. So this is where the Roop Dhyan comes in. Now you are building divine sentiments, even though the image that you will form in your mind is material, but you will get the divine results. So this is very practical for both Karam Yoga and Roop Dhyan for us. So this is the third principle. And the fourth principle, I think we don't need to, it's a very simple and an intuitive one, right? Thinking, loving worldly things with worldly sentiments give us a material result. I mean, it's a pretty normal one, common one, right? That's what we end up doing. So what it means for us is basically that the sentiment that you build on this path, right? With the Karam Yoga, okay, put God, your Ishtadev in front of at your workplace and say, all right, be with me throughout the day and keep remembering it as frequently as you can. Build that consciousness that God is both my protector as well my witness. I used to joke around when I came across this concept initially that God is my protector and your witness, right? It's your witness actually. So he's watching and noting down everything. So that consciousness, when we build, we start getting divine results. It starts purifying our consciousness. And when our consciousness is purified, that means our mind is getting purified. And when our mind is getting purified, that means we can only cultivate noble, wholesome thoughts. And when we continue to do that, it will attract more of it. And when it will attract more of it, it will get more purified. And now it's like preparing a vessel or your drawing room to welcome the VIP, and the VIP is going to be God one day. So when we clean it and reach a stage where it is ready, the vessel is ready, then Guru will give you, basically he'll facilitate the darshan and then the next steps around it, right? Prem dan and all that stuff that happens. But the point here is to understand that we have material faculties, we have material consciousness right now, but that does not limit us from getting divine results based on the bhavs or the sentiments that we cultivate around this practice. Okay, that is the key concept. And when we do that, then we get closer to that state of nirantarta, or doing the karam yoga, and then we start building that insulation enamel that we spoke about to become like lotus. Okay, it all ties back to the shloka now. Okay, this is the way we can utilize these principles for our spiritual to give impetus to our spiritual growth. Any questions? And that eventually makes us like this, right? That we have been talking about, upgraded version of ourselves. We become Nilambo Nucifera. Any questions? I'll take a pause now. On these principles, aren't they interesting principles? They're fascinating, right? Yes, Rahul, go ahead.
Yeah, there is a question in the chat from Rashmika ji, that how many Brahmins are there in Lanka and aren't they all Rakshas? I think she wants to know probably about Lanka.
Pulastya was a Brahman, I believe, Ravan's father. So I think technically they were Brahman. That is a different thing. They became Rakshas through their deeds and stuff like that, but they were Brahman. Pulastya was a Brahman. And even Ravan was a great scholar. He knew all the Vedas and everything. And yeah, so they were Brahmans, they were Rakshas, and they were Brahmans as well.
Yeah, we can take Nanik ji. I think he has raised his hand earlier. Radhe Radhe, Nanik ji.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I was a question about when we're talking about sins, that killing the ants when you walk it is a sin. But if your intention is not that, you don't know. So intention make a difference rather than doing the thing. So it should not be considered a sin. Or if some bug comes in your mouth and or something happened while walking, small bugs come there and they come in the mouth and they die, but the intention is not there. So I was thinking about that intention matter, not actually what happens.
I don't know, there is an element of sin still there, because Krishna is saying no act is bereft of sin in Bhagavad Gita. So yeah, intention aspect definitely. Now, killing an ant knowingly would probably carry more weightage in Chitragupta's book as opposed to killing an ant unknowingly, but both are sin. The proportion of sin may vary when you're doing it knowingly, as opposed to when you end up doing it unknowingly, but sin is still a sin, right? So I don't know how does that get accounted for, but the fact is that fire will do its job whether you do it knowingly or unknowingly. You put hand in fire intentionally, it will burn it. You put hand in fire unknowingly, it will still burn it. That is how it works. So the principles, they will do their job, right? So that is how it works. But yeah, I get your point. If you don't do it intentionally, maybe that it gets offset a little bit, but it's still a sin. Yes, Sandhya. So knowing that knowledge basically, sorry. Okay. Anyways, we'll take a question, then I'll take that part. Go ahead.
Actually, one comment from Ravi ji and one comment from my side for what Nanak ji said. Like, yes, intention matters, but if the intention is just not to harm the other organism, that is still sattvic. But if it is to serve God, then only it can become a non-sin, because then it is non-binding anymore.
Right. That is true. So there was a king. He was said, how are you not implicated in this world when you are ruling? right? Talking about Karma Yoga. When you are ruling, you are all surrounded by all the luxuries and everything that is going on. And how can you be a Karam Yogi or somebody who's not attached to this world? I don't see that in your activities because you're ruling it. And so King said, okay, how dare you ask me that question? Take this guy and take it to him to the gallows. Let him get killed and hanged tomorrow. But give him good treatment. It's his last day. Give him good treatment today. Give him all the luxuries and nice food, massage, and nice bed to sleep, and give him all the comforts that he possibly can enjoy because it's his last night. And that guy was shocked. Anyway, he was straight taken to a palace and given all the luxuries, comforts, and pretty much everything throughout the night. And he was very nicely pampered throughout the night. And next day he was brought. He said, "But bring him to me before taking to the gallows." So next day he was brought to the court, and then King said, "Oh, so how was your evening?" So he was like looking back and said, "Did you enjoy all the comforts? All that you got to?" He said, "How can I enjoy? I was all thinking about my death, what is going to happen tomorrow. So not even for a moment I could." Said exactly. This is how, you always have that bigger picture in your mind. Death can come any moment. How can you so it's not the object that is giving us our happiness, it's our the mind that gets attached to that truly gives us happiness. This guy had all the comforts, but he still could not enjoy because of his impending death ahead, right? So King told him, this is how you can operate even in the world, despite having all the luxuries around. But when you have the big picture in mind, you could be completely detached to that, like a lotus leaf, knowing the big picture part of it. And then that guy understood that. So that was a quick story I wanted to share with you to drive home the point that it is actually possible when you have that big picture in mind. And there are tons of examples in our um, scriptures to talk about people who have led lives as kings and householders who have still been karam yogis. Yes, Rahul, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, there is a comment from Monica ji that Ravan's mother was Rakshasi and his father was a Brahman. That
Yeah,
is why
he was a
this influence
hybrid.
is there.
He was hybrid. I think it took more Rakshas things. So yeah, he was hybrid. He was genetically modified Brahman. But yeah, there were Brahmans in Lanka for sure. And because Rao and Hanuman did kill a lot of Brahmans also in addition to the Rakshasas. But no Brahmahatya. Otherwise, Brahmahatya is one of the uh, Panch Mahapaps, I believe, one of the gravest sins one can incur um, in material life. But he was not. He was absolved from all of that because he was doing it as a Ram Kaj.
And another question in the chat from Priya ji regarding the principles you discussed. The first principle is about Roop Dhyan. Can you clarify the second principle a bit more?
The second principle is loving divine without awareness of its divinity also gives a divine result. Is like, yes. So basically, like I gave the example of Shrupanakha, when she approached Lord Ram, she was not aware of his divinity, that he's God. And a lot of Braj ladies also, they would go to Krishna and they would leave their own kids and go to Krishna's home to see him. Right? Mothers, they have the most attachment to their own kids. But for some reason, they would always, beseech or basically seek Krishna's darshans. So they were not aware of his divinity, but they were still enamored, infatuated by his beauty. And they got the divine results, right? Krishna actually fulfilled their wish when Brahmaji came to test him. When he took all of his friends to the Sumeru Parvat to test out whether he's God or not, then Krishna replicated himself and fulfilled the wishes of those mothers that they always used to, hanker to see him. And then their own kids became like Krishna and they would get the same bliss which they always craved for, right? Only God can do that. Even the mannerisms he copied around his friends, and how they eat, how they talk, pretty much everything he replicated himself, and everything continued as business as usual for, I think, couple of years or 1 year. But Krishna, the point here is, whether you love divinity knowingly or unknowingly, it will still get the divine result. But for you to get attracted towards divinity also takes a lot. It cannot happen in one lifetime. That means Shrupanakha, if you go back, she must have done some kind of a devotion on some practice to get attracted by God. We have also seen God. We never got attracted. We might have given a passing glance to Krishna or other things, but we never got attracted. Maybe we didn't have that much of purity or to actually get attracted towards God. If we had, then results would have been different. Yes, Keshavji, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. I mean, if bugs or ants getting killed or not is one thing, but my concern is when somebody gets fever and because of bacteria or virus, we take medicine, and the intentions are to kill the bacteria intentionally and the virus. What is that? Is it a sin? No, it is not. Even if the intentions are to kill the bacteria and virus. Radhe Radhe.
Defense is allowed. Yeah, defense is allowed, and scriptures permit. If something comes in your territory and the territory here is your body, it is, I think, remedial actions are allowed. But yeah, so the point is, rather than worrying about these sins, which are anyway going to be part and parcel of life, let's think of adding the other things to our life, which are not only going to neutralize these sins, but pave the way for a deeper devotion down the line. So the idea is not to maintain a ledger balance of papa and punya and sin and cancel it, right? That is never going to happen. So the message that I understood from this, from a scriptural standpoint, from Bhagavad Gita standpoint, is that you can never get out of sin. It's a very simple process. If your goal in life is, okay, let me keep on reducing my sin and then one day it is never going to happen. So simply focus on things which are under your control to keep on adding devotion, faith, and deepen your spiritual practice as opposed to minimizing your sins, because sins are a part and parcel of this existence. Material existence is essentially what the message is. Yes, Sandhya.
So first of all, a comment from Kumarji. Sri Ram does a Shiv Puja in Rameshwaram to absolve himself of the sin of killing Ravana, a great Shiv Balthazar who had gone astray by God's design.
Yeah, God does Leela to set an example. But if you think about Ravan, he was not an ordinary person. He was Jai Vijay, right? There were three avatars of Jai Vijay. Actually, Jai Vijay, when Brahma's son went to meet Vishnu and he couldn't, Jai Vijay stopped them. So they cursed them. Okay, because they stopped them, they cursed them. And the curse was either to take 7 births as saints in Mrityulok or 3 births as demons. So they said in Mrityulok, who's going to go? It's a useless place with global warming, COVID, and all that stuff happening. We'll rather take 3 births. But they put a condition: when we'll take those 3 births as demons, God, you will have to take avatar as well. And God agreed. So they took three avatars. One was Ravan Kumbhakaran. Second was Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashyap. And third was, I think, Dhanvantar, Shishupal, probably. I don't know if anybody remembers that.
Kansa and Shishupal, maybe, I don't know.
Kansa and Shishupal or Dhanvantar and Shishu, I don't know. So one of the, so basically the point is, when God comes, the villains are not ordinary people. Okay, when hero has to come and beat the bad boys in movie, hero has to look strong, right? So they're not ordinary people whom God chooses to fight with. Okay, so they are already realized people, because God chooses to not only fight them, but kill them with his own hand. And if he gets that privilege, of course, they go to their own abode. So they were Jai Vijay. They were doing Leela along with God. They're just doing the drama, and they have to be a worthy opponent, right? God, they're not worthy, I would say, but yeah, still, they're special people. They're not ordinary people when they come. Even when this avatar happened, Varaha avatar happened, this guy Hiranyaksh had become, Hiranyaksh is symbolic of human greed. He continued to become more and more and more and more powerful until Varaha avatar, and then he submerged Mother Earth under the water. And then Varaha avatar came, and then it started fighting this guy Hiranyaksh. And when God fights the demons, for God, what is the big deal to fight him? But this war continued for so many years, like a Star Wars or stuff like that. Star Wars is nothing in front of that war that took place. And Devi Devatas, whose job description is to bestow flowers, right? They had to hold that flowers for a long, long time, and their hands started aching. They were like, "What is going to happen?" A lot of suspense. Both were fight amongst the equals and stuff like that. And then finally, what happens? Wow, the this Vara avatar, he just taps him and he's gone after fighting for so many years, right? So he gives Paisa Vasuli to the opponent and then said, all right, let me take care of you. So these are not ordinary people who come. They are realized souls. They come to play Leela and be that worthy opponent to God, to glorify God, and then God takes care of them in the end. So that's Lord Ram doing that puja is to set maryadas for normal people, that this is how I would go about it, right? In all humility. But truly speaking, it doesn't have to. Ravan was already a liberated soul. He was just playing his role to perfection. That's about it in that particular avatar. So all the villains who come with God, they are not ordinary people. They are special people.
And Swati ji says it's Dantavakra and Shishupal. So.
Dantavakra and Shishupal. Yes, that's right. Not Kans. Thank you. Dantavakra and Shishupal. See, God is so tolerant. He gave 100 lifelines to Shishupal, but this guy, because of his pravrti, could not resist that too. So he did 100 mistakes and then finally got killed in one shot. Okay, please fill out the feedback tracker. Today we will do our devotional segment as well. So maybe 1 or 2 hands real quick. We can take Anita ji, we can take, and maybe 1 more hand, and then we'll get to our devotional segment. And please fill out the feedback tracker for any questions that you may have. We'll try to get back to Kahoot alternate weeks. What we'll do is once in 2 weeks, we'll do that because there's a lot of pent-up demand for Kahoots and people are like, they're having withdrawal symptoms just because questions come to their mind, but they don't know where to put it, right? So we need to resolve that problem for them and get back to our Kahoot ways as well. Yes, Anita ji, please go ahead.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. I agree, it's Leela, and Ravan is playing the part here. And he was a Brahman, Rakshas, everything makes sense. But one thing, the catch here is he was learned of scriptures, because end of the day, when someone learns the scriptures, the result should be they should be knowing God. But the scenario here is he is not, he is against God here in this scenario. It's all part of Leela, I agree, but there's a catch here. That's any
True.
explanation for that?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
God will
Radhe.
is like a paras, philosopher's stone. Now, if anything that touches philosopher's stone turns into gold. Now, whether you do it knowingly, right, that I'm going to turn it into gold, it will turn gold. Whether you do it with anger, it will still turn into gold because the contact is established. Now, in this particular case, these villains, when they come, they do devotion in the opposite reverse bhav. Now, the chintan is still there. It is out of hatred or envy for God, but Chintan is always there. Kans used to think, oh my God, Krishna has come. Krishna has all the time is thinking about Krishna in a negative sentiment. But result will still be the same. But it is not recommended for ordinary people to practice devotion in a negative sentiment. Those people could do that. They are not special people. But for ordinary people, we should do devotion in a positive sentiment. But the result will still be the same, even if you do it in a negative sentiment. But then you really have to be at the stature of Kans or Ravan to be able to think about God continuously in that sentiment. So yeah, it was part of the Leela. End of the day, it is Leela only, right? Because they are liberated souls. It's not like Ravan is going to go to hell. Where did he go? He went back. He became Jai Vijay, went back and became Dwarpal of Vishnu again. It's not that they were sent to hell because they did something negative sentiment for God. No. So they had that sentiment that they could think of God all the time at that moment. So it's part of the Leela if we think about it, but we have to learn. We don't have to learn anything from Ravan's character other than any positive traits that we can think about. Right? As such, if you think about it, that's not something any ordinary or a regular devotee would like to emulate, that I want to become like Ravan and then realize God. For us, we have to look at examples of Prahlad and other devotees, because Ravan is playing a Leela and normal people cannot emulate that. Yes, Manoranjan ji, you wanted to add something?
We are unable to unmute him. Sanjay, can you try to unmute Manoranjan?
Manoranjan ji, you have become unmutable today. Yes, Rahul, go ahead.
Yeah, can I make some quick announcements, like 3 announcements for the weekend?
Yes, let's make the quick announcement and we can move to our devotional segment.
So we have tomorrow we have the spiritual secrets from Hindu session coming up, which is a holy special one. And the theme is how to get the color of God. Same time, same platform. So do try to join it. And apart from that, on Saturday, we have the International Women's Day Award Ceremony. And we will be having the keynote by Swamiji. The link and all those details are in the chat. So do check it out. I believe it is 10 a.m. CST, which is 8:30 p.m. IST, Saturday. And then apart from that, on Sunday, we have our regular Sunday satsang. So do check that out. And in the evening, I think we have the Holika Dahan also. So all those things are coming up, the holy festivities. Do check those out. Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Anything else, Sanjay, you wanted to add? Yeah.
Yes, Sandhya. Okay. All right. Karam Yog. How can it's such a coincidence, right? Whatever we are talking about, it comes somehow. Yeah, Manoranjan ji is back. Manoranjan, you wanted to add something real quick? And then we move to our devotional segment where we recite.
Yeah, Radha Radha, am I audible?
You are extremely audible, Manoranjan ji.
Yeah, thank you very much. On today's discussion, quickly, I like to say that in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the third canto, there is an interaction between Yudhishthira and Narada Muni. Yudhishthira is asking that I saw during the Kuru Sabha when Lord Krishna killed Shishupala. I saw him uniting with the God. So how it is possible that is a sinner being united with God? How it is possible? Because Yudhishthira was Dharmaraj and he was able to witness that. Narada is saying, see, now Lord Krishna is Brahman itself. Now, by hook or crook, if somebody is knowingly or unknowingly is associating himself or herself with the creator of this universe, then definitely he is graced by the Almighty and he overcomes all his sins. So on this context, Ramakrishna Paramahansa says that if you wish to take a bath, you go to Ganga and then take a dubki, then you will complete your bath. But if unknowingly somebody pushes you to Ganga, then also the bath will be complete. Otherwise, if you are sleeping in your house and somebody takes the water of Ganges and put it over you, then also the bath will be complete. So anyhow, it will be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoranjan ji. Yeah, so one thing to be understood here is, and maybe in one of the sessions I'll bring that as well, to these people who do that devotion and that bhav, not devotion I would say, but with the hatred sentiment, and especially when God kills demons through his own hands, he does not give them his seva. They get moksha, and those four kind of moksha are there. Sarupya, Salokya, I think there are two more. So maybe in one of the sessions, I'll bring those kind of mokshas. So they don't get that opportunity basically to do seva or the higher bliss of God. They do get that, but it is limited. And I can talk about that in one of the sessions. So it's not that they get the same stature as some of the devotees who love and worship God in the different bhavs that we have spoken about, right? Sakha bhav, Vatsalya bhav, Madhurya bhav, those bhavs, that bliss is much higher than that. So they get kind of a moksha. So that is their punishment for that matter. Okay. It's not a punishment actually, but in a way it is. Okay. Now let's get to our Bhakti Shatak and then we'll wrap up our session with maybe taking 3 or 4 at best hands. Go ahead. Who's the first one today?
Radhe Radhe Dinesh ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. कर्म योग ज्ञान सब साधन यद्यपि बखान राधे राधे वै बिनु भक्ति सबै जनु भूतक देह बिनु प्राण राधे 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 राधे
Radhe Radhe, very nice. So this is a very loaded with Tattva Gyan, right? So Karam Yog, Gyan Yog, Bhakti Yog, these 3 are given in Bhagavad Gita, right? The 3 yogas that have been spoken about. Now all 3, without bhakti, yoga itself is bhakti. it is compared to without bhakti. If you take bhakti out of it, it is like a body without life, dead, doesn't matter at all. So bhakti is the one before all the zeros here. Without bhakti, everything is useless, is essentially what this is saying. So we are on the path of bhakti. So it is it's our extreme fortune that we are building up these sanskars ground up, because at the end of these practices, Guruji will tell that beyond this, you have to do bhakti. And now here we are doing bhakti ground up. So how fortunate we are. Let's move on. Let's take the next hand.
Radhe Radhe, Sandhya ji.
कर्म योग अरु ज्ञान सब साधन यद्यपि बखान राधे राधे पै बिनु भक्ति सबै जनु मृतक देह बिनु प्राण राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे.
Very nice. Thank you, Sandhya. Let's take maybe a couple more.
Radhe Radhe, Anita ji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Karma yoga aru jnana sab sadhana yadapi bakhan Radhe Radhe pै बिनु भक्ति सबे जनु मृतक देह बिनु प्राण राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे राधे Radhe Krishna Radhe. Although Karma Yoga and Gnana are described in the scriptures as path of sadhana, yet without bhakti, all these means of spiritual practice are like body without life.
Thank
you, Radhe Radhe.
Aparna ji, maybe we can take one more hand for the day before we wrap it up. We are becoming a CMM level 5 session now. Continuous improvement.
Radhe Radhe.
Aparna ji.
कर्म योग अरु ज्ञान सब साधना यद्यपि बखान राधे राधे पै बिनु भक्ति सब जनु मृतक देह बिनु प्राण राधे राधे. Although karma, yoga and jnana are described in the scriptures as paths of sadhana, yet without bhakti, all these means of spiritual practice are like a body without life. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna ji. Very nice. Riya ji and Chandru ji will take your hands tomorrow, and I'm delighted to give you 60 seconds back for your day today. So thank you, everybody. Again, Radhe Radhe. Good night, good day. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Tomorrow is the session, the spiritual secrets. So don't forget to attend the session at the same time. And I look forward to seeing you on Sunday, which is a double header, right? We have our session and then that, but tomorrow's session is going to be very exciting. The topic is, I'm not going to spill the beans. So do look out for that at 9 o'clock tomorrow. And I'll see you on next Sunday. Radhe Radhe. Stay safe, stay blessed. Thank you again. Please fill out the feedback.
Radhe Radhe.
Not already. Thank you. Bye.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you everyone for the participation.
Bye.